So you've like just watched this?
Yeah. This is the first time for this one.
Anyway, I need let's crack on because I need to have a shower and then go watch Jurassic Park 3.
Okay. Hello, welcome to Time Enough Podcast. It's where we jump into episodes of the Twilight Zone and beyond. This is Matt here, coming back again as Civil War historian Luke Summerhayes.
Oh yeah, you know me. I love that American Civil War.
Yeah, as I was
I've got a
saying,
theory that Matt invites me onto Civil War episodes over and over because he's embarrassed about his past as a Southerner, and he wants like someone as far removed from that as possible to balance him out. So he's like, I know what, I'll bring in like a peacenik Brit.
well, just yesterday at work, for a few minutes with our coworker, we were going. I was showing her all of the ridiculously horrible things that are still in the southeast. It started off just like, oh yeah, the North Georgia mountains. They're not as nice as Nagano, but I guess they're nice. And she's like, oh, they're so pretty. I was like, okay, now look up Stone Mountain. And if listeners don't know what I'm talking about, yeah, go look up Stone Mountain if you want. It's going to make you think of this episode a little bit.
Right. Before we get into this episode, though, I need to litigate the episode of your podcast I was just listening to.
Oh yeah, sure.
So I'm halfway through your "It's a Good Life" episode, and like, why didn't you invite me on that one, like an all-time classic, when you've got Andrew on it, who's not even that into it?
He asked
I
for it.
think
I thought he was going to be into it.
because you two are such big Twilight Zone heads, and you've probably seen that one a million times, you're like over it. Whereas I watched it for the first time, and like, there's a reason that one's considered a classic. Like, it captures the feeling of just dealing with a shitty kid and having to like tiptoe around them because you know they can just ruin everyone's day.
Well, we certainly know that as people who teach
Right.
small kids, but
But like,
yeah.
yeah, you don't really get into it in your podcast. But I think it captured that feeling so well of like
Mm.
what it must be like to be a parent of just like a terrible child. And like I think the parents especially, they do such a great job of acting like they clearly do love him, but they would probably both be happier if he died.
Yeah, I had the benefit of having a daughter who is more mature than me by age 5. So
Yeah, well, that's what I wondered. I think you and Andrew both just have great kids. But like, you've been a teacher, you've been around awful children.
yeah, but I don't have to be around them for more than an hour. So
Right. And I especially my girlfriend, she also works with kids, but she works at like, it's less of a school than ours and more of a daycare. So she'll have like the same kid 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. And they recently had like just a nightmare. I can't go into it too much detail because it's a public podcast. She's never going to listen though. They had like a problem child, and it's not his fault, right? He shouldn't have been at a school like this. He needed special care. But
yeah,
like
that's something
like
in
our
Japan
work
they
sometimes do, they just take you on anyway because they want the parents' money. And it's like been stressing her and draining her so much because just having to spend all day on like, right, I've got to go into this place where there's just a creature in the corner which might kill itself or something else at any time, and I have to just be aware and
well,
like try
well,
and teach the other students while entertaining this one.
that's a good life. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah,
But
just I felt someone had to come on this podcast and tell you two off for
yeah, sure.
underselling what a great episode that was. And Andrew's like, oh, after a couple of times you get it, but like that's the point, right? Is the tension of having to live like that. And I think, yeah, the fact that it does drag a little bit is kind of ramps up the tension.
Right,
But
right.
yeah,
Okay.
I
No,
thought
I'm
someone should
we're
speak out
always
for that episode.
always open for rebuttal. Why not? I think
Yeah,
that
but
let's
also,
see.
I listen to a lot of podcasts and I'm often like, I want to argue with something someone just said, but this is a podcast where I can because I know you and I guest on it sometimes.
There she blows.
Hmm.
I guess we'll move on to today's episode, which is Still Valley, making it trivial. Original air date was November 24th, 1961. The script is a Serling, though based off of The Valley Was Still by Manly Wade Wellman. What happened to name Manly? No one's named Manly anymore.
Because no one is manly anymore.
Okay.
It's not like the good old days back when men were men and women were men and horses were men.
We've encountered director James Sheldon before. He gave us a few zones as well as episodes of MASH, The Man from Uncle, and Gunsmoke, among others, in a 30-year television directing career. Sergeant Joseph Paradine was played by Gary Merrill. He peaked early, appearing in 12 O'Clock High and All About Eve, and was even married to the latter's Bette Davis for a bit, 10 years if you are counting. Vaughn Taylor played our Witchman Teague. Just to screw with your mind, he was only 51 years old upon filming this.
Whoa! I
Let me
thought the
say that
main guy
again.
looked 51 years old.
He was only 51. Maybe I'll double check and make sure I didn't like bungle my trivia, but I double checked last night, because I was like,
I
no way.
mean, Matt is not great at math, so that is possible.
I'm going to triple check while you're doing the summary or the prologue.
I mean, he had like a crazy beard and stuff. They were clearly he was
Yeah,
made up to look old.
yeah, it's just hard to believe. He can also be found in films like Cat on a Hot Tin Roof and Psycho, in television
Hmm.
series such as Kraft Television Theater and Robert Montgomery Presents. Dogger was Ben Cooper. While not a major part of the zeitgeist, he took on enough cowboy roles to be awarded something called the Golden Boot, but I don't really know what that is. Wilbur Hatch composed the score for this one. Keep your ears open and you'll hear some shades of Star Trek themes. He was a musical director on the original series. And, workaday composers like that tend to, reuse bits of score and stuff or an orchestration, because why wouldn't you? I mean, half of the scores are stock anyway, right? So,
Yeah.
okay. Gonna bring that prologue up for you forthwith. Here we go.
Sir, I'm just a little goblin. The time is 1863. The place, the state of Virginia. The event is a mass bloodletting known as the Civil War, a tragic moment in time when a nation was split into two fragments, each fragment deeming itself a nation. This is Joseph Paradine, Confederate cavalry, as he heads down toward a small town in the middle of a valley. But very shortly, Joseph Paradine will make contact with the enemy. He will also make contact with an outpost not found on a military map, an outpost called the Twilight Zone. Ooh, I'm just a little goblin.
A goblin, not a witch man.
No.
I like that term, witch man, especially
Which
when he
man?
says it in that kind of voice.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, okay, that's correct about the age. People can't see this, but here's the guy in 1952, looking not quite as old. So,
There was a close-up shot where you could see he had like some wrinkle makeup around the eyes.
okay. Well, anyway, I'm going to give that they did a fantastic makeup job on this dude. Then,
Oh, yeah. He looked like a guy who was pretty old being made up to look extra old, whereas in reality, he was a guy who was not that old at all being made to look old. So fair play.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
And
um,
obviously on like a 1950 or 1960, whenever, like little tube TV.
oh, and that would have been no problem at all. So,
Yeah.
uh, now looking, oh yeah, of course the elephant in the room here is that fantastic book with that just says witchcraft and giant weird letters on the front.
Yes.
That's like one of the best.
I would buy a copy of that to have on my mantelpiece.
Yeah, I was thinking there must be some merch for that out there somewhere. One of my other notes is I guess we're getting straight into the weird situation, but you brought up It's a Good Life at the start. But I was like, this guy's kind of running a similar scam on this little town with his book of witchcraft. He's more easily controllable, of course, because he has to read the spells and he's about to die as well, I guess. So
Yeah, well, and also he's running it at a what do you call it? Like he's using it as a weapon of war. He's not just torturing a town for his own amusement.
but it does seem he's kind of like, a backwoods hillbilly that has not really been interacting with society. So now he's just kind of showing up to to mess with everyone. Maybe like Old Man Logan style, you know?
Yeah.
I guess Old Man Logan wasn't a witch, but it's kind of like a demon. He has claws.
Yeah, for
They
sure.
they
It's
bone claws by that point. I don't remember.
Old Man. I can't remember Old Man Logan. The only page I can remember of Old Man Logan, and I bring this up all the time, so apologies if you've heard me share this before. My one of my favorite comic book pages of all time, because they spent like a couple of issues of like Logan refusing to fight, and then eventually he gives in, and you just get a 2-page spread that is just snicked in big letters, and I think that's glorious.
Yeah, you can't quite do that in the movies. I still feel that
No.
way. Yeah, like the movie Logan, kind of the film version. I feel like that's the movie where like everyone loved it, but nobody wanted to watch it twice.
Oh God, yeah, 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 yeah.
I
Yeah, it's
certainly
not a
haven't.
watch over and over film.
No, definitely not.
Also, I watched it a bit after all the hype, and I think it's good. I don't think it's quite as good as people made out.
I'd probably agree with that, but yeah.
I think
How
I think the end was somewhat toothless, and I think the final battle being just like a clone of Wolverine was pretty crap. That's my take on Logan, seeing as we'll probably never cover it in a podcast now that we've stopped the Sci-Fi Sanctuary.
um something that did come up, there was some, I guess, a lot of theme recycling in this one. We have frozen people like an elegy. We've got the
Mm,
controlling, supernatural controller, kind of like it's a good life. We're back to the Civil War after like 6 or 7 episodes. So, how did that sit
yeah.
with you watching this one?
Yeah, it definitely felt like this is a filler episode, which it doesn't necessarily make sense in an anthology show, but yeah, that's what it was. I
Like,
think there's a reason it isn't one of the ones that's mega remembered.
it's like let's go stake claim on the backwood, not backwood, the backlot cowboy set, and
Yeah.
and then that I am just. I guess they used to do more location shootings, go hang out in Death Valley for a month and make 2 episodes. And
Mm,
recently, I've just again, this isn't a complaint. I'm just like, oh, that's definitely a set. And this time, I was like, oh, that's definitely the same room that was in the grave a few weeks ago.
yeah.
Like even I'm like, oh, I think that's even the same sound stage.
Hmm.
I
Like
could be wrong, but
it's a fine episode, but it's not a great episode. I did find it. The main thing I took away was I can't tell what this episode's politics are.
no.
Like, is it pro the Confederate? Is it anti the Confederate? Is it saying that they were in league with Satan? Is it saying that they were noble winners because they didn't fall in league with Satan? Like, I really
Yeah.
don't get it.
I did love the work. Maybe our work is the devil's work, right? Was that or
Hmm.
did I write that? So
I mean, like they're fighting wars, so yeah, it is the devil's work.
I bet the devil was still there in spirit at Gettysburg.
Sure.
Well, where people are shooting each other with, buckshot.
Yeah,
I
anywhere
think,
that men are slaughtering men, the devil is there in some form.
yeah, I was about to say, I don't think they expunge it. It's like, oh, we're gonna have a righteous bloodbath, because we didn't accept Satan into our lives. I mean, they might as well, if you're gonna do that anyway, you might as well accept Satan into your life. Why not?
And if they truly believe that their course is like the righteous noble course of God, then like is winning it by means of, do you go to hell? Do you go to heaven? Who knows? It's almost like the whole thing doesn't actually make sense when you apply it to the real world of adults and not just
uh,
to making children eat their vegetables or whatever the Bible is
but
actually good for.
you're talking about the politics. Of course, the thing with the Confederacy and the Civil War is it's like you can't not bring slavery into the picture, right?
Mm,
Otherwise, I would give it a bit of a brown shirt vibe from Firefly if we are willing to cut that little part out, which we shouldn't be. But you're just going, what are the politics? I felt it, like the main dude in this one, Joseph Paradine, maybe is a bit like our Firefly feller, who I can
yeah,
only remember the actor's name at the moment.
Nathan Fillion
Yeah.
playing Mal Reynolds.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. The thing, because they talk about, they're tyrants, they're coming to invade. But also, he's describing it as two nations, which is interesting because you always think of it about states' rights and succession. But it's not like they wanted to go away and be like 20 independent countries. They were just going to be a different big country.
Yeah. They're going
Doesn't
to
really.
confederate themselves. It was like, yeah, they're going to try the same thing, but without those people that don't want us to do stuff up north, you know? The
And like
main.
when you put it that way, then it really is like kind of about slavery, you know?
I
Because
mean,
what's the one thing they don't want us to do? Like,
I mean, I'm sure, you know, there are plenty of like people with their, you know, running their own farms on their own, and people living in the towns and stuff who
yeah,
maybe are having a different, but they still have to deal with the fact that, you know, 5 minutes down the road, that's going on, right? So,
yeah, but also like America today is basically 50 independent countries, and like the the federal government can't get anything done. So
yeah,
it's not
that's,
like states' rights have been, you know, that violated by losing the Civil War.
I think they've kind of, since COVID, they've kind of ramped up. Like before that, I think people did have the impression like basically at this point the federal government is in control, whereas now, you know, in 2023 it's like, yeah, Texas and Florida and California all seem kind of like their own countries now, you know.
Well, but like, you know, you've got the literal president tweeting someone should do something about these guns. It's like, you're the president, mate. Who else is going to do it? And then everyone underneath is like, yeah, he can't. He can't do anything.
I mean, I think we're you know, you live in interesting times. I think especially in America where you are seeing a shift in the paradigm now, you
Well,
know.
as someone who's not an American, has never been an American, and has never been in America, watching your empire collapse from the outside is very interesting.
Oh, well, I've taken a ringside seat, haven't I, by sitting
Yeah.
in Japan for over a decade.
Well, like you know, for whatever empire America once was, I think we're in the end times of that.
Yeah, yeah, history
For
moves.
good
I mean,
or
that, you know, the 90s was just that weird spot of, oh, history's over, everything's good now, you know.
yeah, I don't think I'm sure that's not the only time someone has said that when it seemed good for them.
No, that's just the only
Yeah,
time in that, you
in
know,
our lifetime, I know, I know.
that people would remember that. Yeah.
See,
Um,
whenever I hear that, I'm reminded of the Chairman Mao quote where they asked him, "What do you think of the French Revolution?" He says, "I'll tell you when it's over."
yeah, sure.
You know, yeah, we're still living in. Like, talk about the Civil War, right? How long ago was the Civil War? But we're still living in consequences of it to this day. I mean, we're not, but American states are.
Well, yeah, like I mean, you know, Texas and Florida were the first ones I came up with where, you know, it is kind of I mean, obviously they are still part of the country, but they seem to have kind of their own thing. I mean, Texas actually was its own country to start with, and kind of, I don't know if I should say hesitantly or not. I don't know my Texan history well enough, but Texas was definitely its own country before joining the states.
Yeah,
They
I know. I learned that from Zorro.
That's right. Zorro teaches you everything.
Actually, it
This
might
is
have been California and Zorro. I can't remember. One of the
yeah.
Zorro films. It takes place during the election to join the United States.
Oh, okay. It might depend on which version you're watching.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah.
guess.
I'm talking about one of the and not even one of the good, one of the latter um Antonio Banderas ones.
Okay, my Zorro is Zorro's Fighting Legion from like 1940 or something,
Right.
which is kind of slow.
Because
I'm not
Matt's
recommending
really
it.
old.
Yeah, and my Zorro. Have you ever heard the term witch man before
No,
outside
but
of
I
this
love
episode?
it.
I do love it. It's
I
like,
prefer Witchman to Wiccan.
well, I
Or
mean,
what is
wizard.
Warlock the male witch?
Oh,
I feel
warlock.
like
If you're
Wizard
really
is
into,
different.
yeah, okay, warlock then. So this guy's a warlock, but
Yeah.
I it's kind of like that hillbilly thing. Like he doesn't know the word warlock, so I'm a witch man. I mean, I kind of want to go around saying that to people now, you know,
Yep.
and what has been called the Southern madman voice.
Yeah,
So
whenever I do a magic trick for the kids now, I'm gonna be like, I'm a witch man. All of my magic tricks are just like, oh, it looks like that rubber band teleported to your other finger.
um, how about the facial hair ratings in this episode? There is a wide variety of differently
I
groomed facial
really
hair.
like we see the like lieutenant at the end.
He's got that like mustache wax thing going
Well,
on.
what I like about it is you see him from such an angle that you see the shadow of his mustache on his cheek under the mustache because it's pointed out at such an angle. That's phenomenal.
So
That's
he's
top tier to me.
okay, because we got the Witchman, super wild,
Oh yeah,
um,
yeah. His out of control hillbilly beard is
we've got
pretty special as well.
we've got Paradines. I've been in war long enough. I just don't care anymore. Growth
Yeah.
and what was the other? I got it in my notes here.
Oh
The
yeah,
other
the other little dweeby,
Dogger.
the guy who's rather reasonably wants to surrender in this losing war, I should say, rather than insulting him.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm sure people on both sides are like, why are we doing this? Probably everybody was at the end, except for a
Yeah.
couple madmen, which were the people running the show, more or less. I mean, isn't that how war works? I don't know. Am I being
Pretty
too
much.
idealistic?
I don't think any wars. I don't think many wars really go down to the wire, right? I
Yeah.
think you pretty much tell who's won at a certain point. But like in Japan, like in the Second World War, America had pretty much beaten Japan, but Japan was holding out because they wanted to get a better terms on their surrender. Like it wasn't that they thought they were going to win it, but they thought if they made it costly enough, then they would be able to have a what was the term, like a conditional surrender, whereas America kept pushing for unconditional surrender.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's not like
Which,
anyone was there like, oh yeah, but if we just turn it around now, we can still win.
yeah,
I don't think that was going through their heads.
I guess nobody expects the atomic bomb, right?
Yeah, well,
Especially not in the 40s.
even the atomic bomb is not why they surrendered. You grew up in a country. They
Oh
surrendered
no,
because
that's
Russia got
Russia. Yeah,
involved.
no, I know Russia was on their back door
Like
and still has some of
atomic
the
bomb did
violence.
less damage than like most of the fire bombings of the cities. So
True. I mean, yeah, the Dresden, Germany too. But I mean, I guess it's just the. I want to say that. Let's say the mind effect. You can say it's propaganda if you want, but that's not strong enough a word, right? I mean, just something like
yeah,
that's so visceral that it
yeah.
affects
It's
mindsets.
like it's the fact that you've been taught is fact, sort of thing.
Yeah, because it's like Russia is still across a bit of water. We don't. That's not a reality quite yet. Although
Mm,
that would have been a far worse reality if it had come to pass. I'm sure.
yeah.
Um, Something that kind of hit me on this episode. I mentioned having a few Star Trek music cues. Maybe this was part of it, but it kind of had, even though being in this kind of this Civil War Virginia setting, it did have a bit of a Star Trek vibe to the story. Like you got a away mission,
Yeah,
Kirk goes
I
in,
think it's
finds the
that we
frozen
have
people.
it's because we have like a guy who goes in from the outside, figures out what's going on, goes and reports back. They have a moral quandary at the end. Yeah, it could have been, Kirk lands on this planet, discovers this super weapon. They could use it against the Klingons, but at what cost?
Right. So, yeah. So I was thinking maybe the magic is just science that nobody here understands.
It's literally a book from Satan, Matthew.
Yeah, but there could
Don't
be
give
a
me that one.
yeah. Well,
Don't try
okay.
and Highlander to this.
So this is just like a prelude to Highlander too. Um, well, I'm not saying the book. Maybe the book itself is not technology, but the magic is some kind of technology, right?
Oh yeah, magic is just science you don't understand, blah blah blah.
Yeah, yeah. That's what
But
I'm
like, yeah,
getting at.
because the guy's giving it like, oh, there must be some natural explanation. There's no
Right.
explanation which is not this is satanic witchcraft. Like,
I mean, obviously that would be the difference in Star Trek. It would be satanic witchcraft. It would be
no, no, no.
it would be like some supercomputer that Kirk
Yeah.
has to blow up with questions or something. But and yeah, in this episode, obviously the the Civil
Okay,
War
I
setting
thought you
allows
was.
it to be
I didn't realize we
completely.
were still talking about our hypothetical Star Trek episode. I thought you were saying that in this, it's just science.
Oh no, I'm saying, but it's like it's a very small turn of the dial to get there, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. It's a quick rewrite.
So yeah, I don't know if you're deep enough into magic stuff, maybe you could be like, whoa, you do this, and I don't know. We need to get more
While we're talking
magicians.
about witchmen, it's been phenomenal. So on the TikTok the kids use, there's a lot of teenage girls and young women and old women and all kinds of people who believe in magic, and they're doing their kind of magic. And there's this one guy who's been on there just challenging them to curse him and then just posting about how great his life is still going. And they hate him and they're so furious at this because he's just like, okay, if your magic's real, I challenge you all to curse. And they're all trying to curse him. And he's just like, hey, my life's still going great. Here's my car. Here's my wife. And it's just a phenomenal piece of trolling. I love it.
He probably has he probably sits in a magic circle all day, to protect
Oh,
himself
that's what
from the
they're
magic.
saying. Like, oh, well, he's obviously doing his magic back. Someone else is doing counter curses.
Well, I'm saying it facetiously. I guess they're doing it earnestly though.
Oh, I thought you were just saying it because you don't want to upset Gordon.
I mean, there's you can. I think tricks of the mind, all that are fine. But yeah, obviously, you're not going to freeze everyone in the street with your magic. You're not going to curse anyone with your magic. Not directly, but yeah.
I think like a purely esoteric, put good things into the world and good things will come back, and
Right.
that kind of thing. I don't believe anyone can perform sorceries of any kind.
Yeah, before he called himself a witch man, I was going to declare him a grand wizard of the Confederacy. But
Oh, that means something else, I think.
So yeah, exactly. So it's probably better that he had his own nomenclature to throw on himself. This is,
and you can't do much better than Witchman.
Yeah. Maybe I wasn't looking closely enough, and the passersby, and maybe it's that they were all disheveled anyway. But I just noticed the uniform game was like 5 notches up here.
Oh yeah, at least on the main guy, he looked great.
Oh, a lot of the background people look fine too. I guess by this point, maybe they
because they just had a troop of soldiers, and all they had to do was stand still. They probably just hired like a local reenactment group.
Right, that's why I was about to say they probably,
In fact, because the story is so like, Twilight Zone 101, it's almost like someone at the studio was like, oh, hey, I heard there's going to be a reenactment group in town. Write a Twilight Zone we can quickly film down there.
Oh,
don't involve them acting too much.
I don't remember which of the Star Trek fan series is, if it was the phase 2
is it
one,
the rapey one or the other one?
Yeah, I think it's phase 2, but I don't remember which one it is. But yeah, there was one episode, and it wasn't a bad episode, but it was just clear that the reenactments in town this week,
right?
Because the episodes, and then you got the camp, because that's just a way to like add a bunch of budget, right?
Oh yeah, that's why they landed on this planet is gangsters and this planet is Nazis and this planet is because the backlot existed and it looks expensive.
Right. Well, I think on the reenactors, you go to the national park and hang out with them, or whatever. I've actually been to a couple of them, but have I? Yeah. I haven't been to like a full blown people like running at each other shooting one, but I've been to
but
people have set up the camps or whatever.
There's a great episode of Peep Show where he goes to like the World War II reenactment with another guy, and he thinks it's just a fellow history buff, and they're obviously the baddies. And then he slowly realizes the guy he thinks is his history-loving friend is just an actual Nazi. And like the commanding officer walks by and he gives him like a "See Kyle," and the commanding officer's like, "Jeremy, well, not Jeremy, the other guy. We've told you not to do that."
You got to be careful what you say to the Germans, right? That's what John Cleese says.
Don't mention the war.
Yes. What was the other bit? Oh, yeah. How did you watch this episode?
On my phone at Family Mart eating my lunch.
Okay, yeah. So you didn't get to did you get to play the Twitchy Blinky game?
No, what?
That's where you're trying
to well, the act a little bit.
Did you notice the dude like just struggling to hold that barrel up?
No, but I can imagine.
Yeah, I'm watching on Blu-ray and stuff, and
it's not so much the definition, but you're watching this like second and third times, right?
Yeah, but no, even the first time I was like, oh, that guy, he's been holding that barrel for 10 minutes and he is not happy, and it's written.
No, the one I noticed was just when the main guy gets frozen himself, like when he's shouting at the witch man, he's obviously in a much more dramatic pose than any of the others. So for the close-up, they use a freeze frame. But then they also did do some shots of him clearly holding that pose, and he was a bit wobblier than everyone else because he was in a much more difficult one.
Well, that's what I mean with Barrel Guy. He was
But
having
then
the
also he can wink. There's a bit where the guy gets to wink, so it's not necessarily an error in this because they're
oh,
not frozen in time like they have been in some of the more sci-fi ones. It's like witchcraft is stopping them being able to move.
right.
So if they wiggle a bit and blink a bit, that's actually makes sense in the context, you know?
Though he allows Paradine to blink, right? He's
I
like,
see.
I mean, he gives him the power to blink his right eye if he's gonna, be cool.
Okay.
Whereas the guy that was holding a flag that blinked, I mean, sure, it could, like you said, it's not a sci-fi freezing, so maybe he can blink a little bit. That's fine.
Oh yeah, because otherwise they'd all start drying out and bleeding from the eyes eventually, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this is more of just me being like entertained by the,
Oh no, 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 no. I
realities of
get it. I get it.
1961.
So
But
a lot of people love to pick out plot holes, but what I like to do, my favorite thing to do, is try to fill them.
yeah, yeah. Like I just, I find it charming when the guy is like clearly struggling with that barrel. Although I guess, the guy may really and even in world could be struggling with that barrel because he's
Right,
still
yeah,
holding it.
because his physical body is still doing it.
Although Witchman does does note that um Paradine can hear him, but the other people are, out to lunch, right?
I
They're
see.
not they're not perceiving anything at the moment.
But see, I didn't read because I think he just says like you can hear me. I didn't necessarily read it as the others can't, but I thought maybe they all can, but he just doesn't care if they can hear him
That
because he's
could
not
be the
planning to
case.
unfreeze them.
Okay, I felt like there was like one line of dialogue that alluded to that, but
Oh, you
might
could be right. You've seen
be
it more
wrong.
times than me.
Yeah. So he was so sing song with his talking. He was talking like this, and I thought he was going to start singing a song about magic and witchmen, which I was actually a little disappointed we didn't get a musical number because I thought we were about to.
Yeah, he was a little bit on the bonkers side. That's
I,
fun. That's part
I,
of the fun.
I like it more now that we're talking about him, because watching it, I was like, okay, Witchman, whatever. But then once you have to start talking to somebody else about the Witchman, he becomes more entertaining, I think.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I love a witch man. It's just that he didn't. There are better episodes you could do with a witch man that good.
Oh, you can. I just thought he was a nice balance of coherent and crazy, because
Yeah.
you can just go wild eye nutso like the
Well,
one in the Real Martian.
he's one
Please
of those
stand up.
guys who's like he's telling the truth. That doesn't mean he's not insane.
Right, right. So I thought that in this episode they did that characterization well because,
Yeah.
as I say in the Real Martian, that guy is just like eye twirling nutbag, right? So
Yeah.
he doesn't have. In fact, he's just lying outright over and over. So this guy is a little more interesting to me. Of course, he's like one of the main characters in this episode. He's not like window dressing like in that episode. So,
Yeah.
did you have another big hit you wanted to take observational wise on this episode?
No, he's mostly been talking not about this episode.
We even talk about the Witchman awful lot. So
You have thought about the witch man.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like my main takeaway was just like, oh, it's really weird. What are they trying to portray or express here? Is it coming from an angle of like, maybe the Confederacy was wrong, but there were good men on both sides? Is it coming from a actually they should have won it sort of angle?
like
I was curious what they were specifically going for.
I guess just real world wise, by this point, like you said, it's a filler episode, but probably like time wise, like he just probably had to crank this one out.
Oh yeah,
would have definitely benefited from another,
it
draft or
didn't
two,
really
but
have a twist.
or they get. I guess the twist happens 10 minutes in, right? Maybe that's
Right.
another reason it feels so Star Trek because in Star Trek, often the twist is,
The twist
maybe
is like the first ad break, yeah.
yeah, or in the middle. It's usually
Hmm.
not Act 5 or something.
No, because it gives you they've come across a twist, then deal with that.
They have to deal with
But that's
it.
the thing, yeah. Star Trek, they have to resolve the issue and fly away. Whereas Twilight Zone, they can just be like, bum, 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 and then like, yeah, everyone's dead. What you gonna do about it? Tune in next week. They can't do a Star Trek episode where it's like, turns out it was this, and then the Enterprise is destroyed. See you next week.
Well, my favorite TNG episode is the one
Yeah,
where
they
the
destroy
Enterprise
every ad
blows
break.
up at every ad break. Yeah, but Yeah, obviously this is a little different. I guess that's what makes this a little bit of a different Twilight Zone, and that does have that structure.
Mm,
Obviously, they can't like they make a choice about the twist.
mm.
We can decide what the Twilight Zone when I start asking the questions in a minute, but maybe a Twilight Zone is going to Gettysburg and being murdered.
Well, yeah, I was going to suggest that a rewrite could have seen a version where they do use the book, and actually being in league with the devil is what loses them the war,
Yeah,
because
another
then
draft or two.
the other side has the righteous fury of God on their side or whatever.
Yeah. They what would that? No, that'd be a priest or something. That sucks. Okay, I was bishop because it's like what would the rich man be for that? But that
Oh
would
yeah,
be the
something like
Pope. Yeah.
that. Although if the Pope rides into battle on a flaming steed and starts shooting laser beams, I would enjoy that.
On a white horse, they do reference that.
Yep.
Maybe he could be redubbed Pope Man. That'd be cool. Yeah.
Pope man, is he like Bible man?
Yes. He's exactly like Bible Man, down to that thing that looks like a lightsaber.
Yeah.
Okay, good. See, yes, that we. It's too bad we weren't there in 1961 to give us another draft or two. Um, questions: Who in this episode goes into or through the Twilight Zone?
I would say it's all of the soldiers who get frozen.
Okay.
I think that's the closest we get to being in a Twilight Zone in this. You could say that it's like parodying, encountering a witch man and discovering witchcraft or whatever, but he ultimately, apart from, I guess he briefly does get frozen. So during that time, I guess he's in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, he gets at least a run in, but the guy holding the barrel is deepest in the Twilight Zone, I
Oh
guess.
yeah,
So, because he's been holding that barrel for a few hours, and that's gotta suck.
yeah, but
He's
he's
gonna,
gonna be jacked afterwards.
yeah, but he's
If
gonna
I
be
could
so
like
sore.
start planking and then let a wizard just like freeze me, Witchman, sorry, wizard is lame.
Yeah.
Witchman is dope. Um, that's the main thing I think our listeners should take away is that witchmen are dope.
Yeah, so now you don't have to feel like you're Harry Potter adjacent when you're talking about this stuff because you got a witch man.
Mm-hmm.
Works. Is that close to a Witcher? I don't know. I'm still not familiar with Witcher.
Witcher is like a monster hunter. He has some magic, but he's not a sorcerer.
Oh, is he like kind of a redneck?
I guess it's
Okay.
like a bounty hunter type deal. They just go to village and kill monsters. But I think they take like a special potion, and then it can either kill you or make you superpowered.
Yeah. I guess location wise in this episode, that village is the
Mm.
Twilight Zone, and so the
Yeah,
people at the
if
camp
if the
are
Twilight
not.
Zone is like a physical location, it's that.
How about the other soldiers that have to consider the witchcraft book? Are they encountering the Twilight Zone or just turning down the
They're
Twilight
brushing
Zone?
against it, but well, because it's parodying who turns it down. The other guys are like bang up for it. They're
And
like,
then
yeah, sell our souls to the devil. Sure, we'll win this war.
yeah, and of course his solution is to burn the books.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm sure the South had no problem with book burnings, Matt.
Yeah, I'm just saying that was his moral. I don't know. There's nothing moral about that. Okay, whatever. They're just people who are trying to choose which horrible fate they're gonna have, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's how
yeah. I mean, it's war, right? There's not like there's good options.
right. Um, let's. I guess we're gonna put the focus on the soldiers, but we'll start with parodying. Does he deserve his trip into the Twilight Zone? I guess that's like
I,
asking if Kirk and crew deserve their run-ins on alien planets.
I mean, you go out scouting, you get what you find.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
he comes out of it pretty much smelling of roses,
I bet he doesn't smell like
apart from
roses.
the side he's on.
And the fact that he hasn't eaten meat in a month and has been out in the
Oh yeah, yeah.
field.
I'm sure he smells.
I'm sure he smells
He
the same
smells
thing.
like roses, which are currently in manure because they're being planted.
Yeah, okay, that makes more sense. Okay. But yeah, I guess it is same thing with the passersby. The thing that was kind of nice about that was everybody was going down that trail, equally,
Mm,
right? Whereas this one we do have to be like, oh, now we do have to consider a rank and stock Confederate army group,
right.
right? So Because if you're in the board or in what the Congress, whatever they had, if you're in the halls of government, now you are dealing with people doing like truly evil stuff.
Yeah,
It's
but
like
rank
like
and
you said
file
with
soldiers.
with the surprise Nazi at the reenactment. So you don't
Mm.
necessarily know what everybody else is thinking.
Like, it's one of the reasons I like, even though it's not a great film, the Tom Cruise film Valkyrie. Is I just don't think we explore enough the fact that not every soldier who was a German and who was told to go and fight for his country was like a hateful, evil Nazi.
Yeah. So again, Paradine could be a very stand up dude back in
He seems
the
like a stand
pastors.
up dude. He doesn't want to give surrender. He doesn't want to. He refuses to use the book.
Yeah.
He seems
Whereas,
fairly up together.
the guy back in the passersby our guitar guy was pretty chill, right? So, of course,
It's
they were all.
interesting. Have they made a Twilight Zone where it stars anyone from the North yet?
I'm thinking about that.
I haven't seen it if they have.
I guess maybe that's the thing in 1960. It's about 100 years, right? 100 years after the war. So maybe there
Mm.
was like, again, like that weird Firefly nostalgia. And
But
since the
also,
John Birch Society was still a notable presence in 1961,
this is being made in Hollywood, right?
yeah,
So you're in
Burbank,
California in the south of the country.
right?
So I suppose the guys who are around who are into the Civil War are probably not into the Yankees.
Well, California is a different issue though, because that wasn't
Yeah,
really involved in it, and that just had a mix of everybody. So
right.
yeah, but
But then I
yes,
think, yeah, like in Japan, right? There's the obsession with like the glorious loss. They love a loser who died valiantly. So
yeah, well,
I can understand liking the South from that angle, right?
mm.
They didn't win, but by God, they fought for what they believed in. Slavery.
I was gonna say 20 years later, the Dukes of Hazzard had the brothers still fighting the good fight with a Confederate battle flag on their car. So, that's TV in 1981, and it was
Mm-hmm.
a hit. So, it is kind of weird to just track when people's, because now it seems, yeah, all of that seems like ridiculous. Why would you do that? The interesting thing here is it's Twilight Zone's generally a pretty progressive show, right? But this one
Mm.
has a bit of a weird vibe.
No, it's because it's before 2008 when Obama was elected and racism ended.
Oh yeah, of course. And then it came back for its encore engagement in 2016. So,
Yeah.
um, well, I don't know. Yeah, talking about who deserves what in the war. Twilight Zone, this one, it did seem like a choice. So you deserve what you get, I guess, is my bottom line.
Mm.
Everyone got to make their choices in this one, which is very different than a normal Twilight Zone.
Well, I mean, those Yankee soldiers who were all frozen in place didn't get to make a choice.
Oh yeah, they did. I guess we're talking about the people with speaking parts in this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, those they just had to deal with the witch man. Um, where would you like to place this on the tripometer?
Yeah, I guess it's not a particularly trippy one. Like we said, this is just Twilight Zone .mp4. So on the tripometer, it's got to be exactly 2.5.
I was thinking that. Oh, and you gave a number. That's interesting. Okay. I was thinking 2.5, but then I decided that's the base score, and I have to add a half point for Witchman. So 3 for me.
Wow.
Yeah. I basically agree with your 2.5, but yeah, Witchman stuck in my head. So that's
Mm.
trippy. So that takes us one toke over the line, I guess. Final thoughts before you go get frozen while planking.
I mean, like, if you really want to get out there and watch the Twilight Zone, don't watch this one. But
Yeah,
if you're making your way through the series, it's not like skip that one.
yeah. I just recorded the jungle
I think that's
yesterday,
it.
even though that's next week's episode.
I think the only ones I would say skip that one are some of the comedy ones.
Well, no, what I was gonna say is I'll say this again next week, obviously, but I said that one would be good to stick. The jungle might be a good one to put between two good episodes in the marathon, right? This
Right.
one I might skip it. I might put Elegy there instead, which is
This
an
is the
episode
one
I seem to like more than most people.
you include this one in your marathon as this is when everyone's going to go and make a drink and make a snack, and but you still want to have one playing. You don't want to like take a break.
It's like you look over at the TV and those people are frozen. Hey, that book says witchcraft. That maybe does enough for this episode.
Witch man, yeah,
Yeah, you stick around for 3 minutes of the witchman ranting, and that's the part you pay attention to. So
yeah.
definitely a fan of that bit of this episode, if at least.
Like given a different lick of paint and dragged out 45 minutes, and if it was Kirk and Spock, and there is a nugget of a good story here.
Yeah, like I said, a
I
few
just
more
I just
drafts would
think,
have helped.
yeah, the very short, um, like Twilight Zone kind of operates on one big emotion and a little bit of shock and awe, and this doesn't have enough of either of those.
Maybe I guess at this point in time they did not know that the next season would be hour-long episodes, but
Mm.
this might
I
have been a
also
good one to sit on.
maybe this episode holds up better if you have it within you to like want these guys to win. Whereas because I'm so 100% just like, I mean, no, these guys deserve to lose this war. I'm not like caught up in this moral quandary of like, oh, should we use the witchcraft to win? No, we'll go down valiantly. It wasn't that valiant. So I
No,
guess there's a mindset where this episode is better.
yeah, I do like your writer's hat thing where we just have them go ahead and accept their Lord Satan and get defeated by God. It would be a little too moral and religious feeling, but that would actually make sense in 1961. So
But also, like, when you're talking about this issue, just like take a stance. Don't sit on the fence with regards to the Civil War.
yeah, I mean the Twilight Zone takes so many notable stands in other episodes, and here it's just
Mm-hmm.
it's a wishy-washy point of view. So
So I wonder if it is just, there was a lot of Southern blood making this or funding it at the very least.
the Reenactment Society, I don't know. Anyway, closing out today, this is Time Enough Podcast, which is Time Enough Pod on Twitter, Facebook. You can dig into us at on Patreon at Podcastio Podcastius, where you get the episodes early, some extra chitter chatter. Luke and I have been talking about the 100 best and 100 worst films as arbitrarily voted on by IMDb raters. That's Films and Filth. I talk about Disney films and I call it Disney. And we're just wrapping up a run on the 60s TV show The Prisoner with Imprisoned in Prison and The Prisoner Prison Cast. I'll toss you the ball for the video game side, I guess.
Yeah, you can find other podcasts we make include Luke Loves Pokemon. That's the one that gets the listeners. It's me discussing a different Pokemon family every week, getting into depth with the lore and like their origins in real world mythology or real world creatures. There's Monster Mash, which does a similar thing, but with a bit more banter because it's with four of us about Monster Hunter, although that's currently on hiatus because they're winding down putting monsters in the game at the moment. There's a couple more episodes to come because there's a couple more DLC monsters. And then hopefully starting soon will be Hyrule Field Report, a sort of deep dive audio play along of the new Zelda game. Again, we're hoping to get very granular and nitty gritty and deep into the lore, maybe get some guests involved. And if you just want to hear four idiots having a good laugh, head on over to the Game Show, a game show about games in the mold of classic British panel shows.
Okay, I guess I'm gonna go get my witchcraft book, study up on satanic witchcraft, and become a witch man.
I'm gonna go strangle my witch man, if you know what I mean. I don't know what
Okay,
that means.
nah, these people can work out something probably.
Yep. I'll see you tomorrow for some Citizen